Good afternoon. I'm going to do just a brief, this is for those of you who are absent, recap of the notes we did last class. So, the time period we're looking at is the Protestant Reformation. It's the time when people start protesting the ideas of the Catholic Church and start forming different Christian churches. So, things that lead to that are the church has been doing something called usury. It's a word we don't use anymore. All it means is charging interest on loans. So the definition of usury is charging interest on loans, which actually violates the teachings of the church. So the church was doing something that Jesus actually said don't do. On top of that, you have German and English nobles, so the wealthy people in Germany and England are going to start wondering, why are all the leaders of the church Italian? It's not fair, it's not reasonable, we are good Catholics, there should be some people from our country running the church as well. People are going to start questioning, why is the church so rich and powerful? Jesus actually preached against being greedy, and he said that it was next to impossible for a rich person to get into heaven. So why then do the bishops and the Pope and all of those people have big, incredible houses when the people that they are serving are living on next to nothing? And then the final straw, this and the usury idea are the two big ones that you're supposed to know. The church was selling something called indulgences. An indulgence, the definition of an indulgence, is a pardon that can be purchased. So people were coming in sometimes with really incredible sins such as murder, and the priest was saying to them, you can purchase an indulgence, and that will forgive your sin. So that could be something like, if they were very wealthy, maybe paying for a new church to be built, or giving money towards a cathedral, those kinds of things. And in exchange, they were told their sins are forgiven. So those are the four big things that are going to lead people to start questioning the Catholic Church and the way it's being run. So we have three guys you're supposed to know about: Martin Luther, John Calvin, and Henry VIII. So these are brief summaries of what you need to know. So Martin Luther is going to end up with a church named after him, the Lutheran Church. It's based on these big ideas. So Martin Luther believed you got into heaven based on your belief in Jesus as the Son of God, and that nothing else mattered. It was just a purely personal thing between you and God. So all the other things the church told you don't matter. He's also going to start preaching that the Bible is the ultimate authority. So it doesn't matter what your priest or any priest, including the Pope, says. Only thing that matters is what the Bible says. And then, to top it all off and anger all the people he had not angered, he's going to say all humans are equal before God. So rich people are not better than poor people. The king is not any better than the people he rules. The Pope is not any better than a regular priest. All these people are going to be upset with this idea. And it is going to get him in a lot of trouble. This is Martin Luther nailing his ideas to the church door, where he thought everyone would look at them and then they'd have a discussion. They were called the 95 Theses. So that's the list of 95 things he thought the church needed to fix. They're not going to fix them. He's just going to get in trouble with the church, and it's going to lead to a new type of Christian church called a Protestant church. So these are Christian people who are not part of the Catholic Church. Now, at the same time, we have a guy in France who also has some ideas that don't match the Catholic Church. He's going to do his teaching from 1530 to 1564. His church will eventually be known as Presbyterian, although there are a bunch of other churches that are based on his beliefs as well. His big idea was predestination. It's based on something he read in the Bible. It's the idea that it has already been decided whether or not you're going to heaven. We will know whether or not you're going to heaven based on the way you live your life. And he believed that the way that you guaranteed you live a good and righteous life is by your work ethic. So if you are always working, you don't have time to think about sinning. It's a very simple idea, but if you think about it, if you are always out doing work, you don't have time to get in trouble. Therefore, you are not going to do anything that will make you not go to heaven. He is going to be super popular in France, and his ideas are going to spread. His followers are going to spread. He is going to get kicked out of France, but invited to be the leader of the city Geneva in Switzerland, which also speaks French, in the country next door to France. And he is going to run the city of Geneva on his ideas, his Christian ideas. And that's going to make Protestant churches spread. So now we've got Lutheran churches in the German areas and Scandinavia, plus French-speaking churches based on John Calvin that are also Protestant. Now our last guy that you're supposed to know, Henry VIII. He's the King of England. His ideas are being spread at the same overlapping time with these guys. His church will eventually be called the Anglican Church. That means it's from England. Now, he is going to have a fight with the Pope, kick the Pope out of England, and say he is in charge of the church in England. So how did we get there? Well, Henry actually what he wanted was called an annulment, but on your state test, they use the word divorce. He's going to have a wife. Her name is Catherine. She's not able to have any sons. She has a bunch of children that die. She has one daughter named Mary that lives. Henry is not, he's not young, so he's anxious to have a son. He asks the Pope, who he thinks is his friend, for an annulment, and the Pope says no. So the Pope before, the one he asked, had named him Defender of the Faith, because when Martin Luther had these crazy ideas we talked about, Henry is the one who stood up and said, I will protect the church with my army if you need it. And so he and the old Pope were best friends. He thought the new Pope would do him a favor, and he says no. You need to stick it out with your wife. The Catholic Church does not do divorce. You've already had 5 children. 4 of them died, but you've already had the children, so you are married. So Henry is going to say, well, fine, then I am going to break up with you. He breaks up with the church, and he starts his own church. Now his church, the National Church of England, or the Anglican Church, copies everything, because he is a super Catholic. Everything in the church originally is the same as the Catholic Church. The only difference is he is in charge instead of the Pope. But what it does let him do, for a king, Henry was poor. He's going to take all of the land in England and Wales that belonged to the Catholic Church, which was a lot. He's going to take it away from them. He's going to sell all that land, mostly to people that are his supporters, but if they had enough money, he wasn't as picky. Which does 2 things. 1, it makes the Catholic Church really weak and it essentially disappears. And 2, it makes him rich and more powerful. 3, it's going to make people who support him richer and more powerful. So here are his wives. I've given the short version here. To get the long version, you had to come to class. But short version is she didn't have a boy, so he divorced her and sent her away. She didn't have a boy, so he chopped her head off. She had a boy, but she died having him, and the boy ended up dying when he was 15 anyway. He marries Anne of Cleves. He actually does not even have sex with her, so they don't have any children, and he gets that one annulled. He marries the young Catherine Howard, who he accuses of having an affair after they're only married about a year, and then, so they don't have children. And then he's going to marry Catherine Parr, and she's actually going to be the wife that is alive when he dies. And she's going to actually raise his two children, Elizabeth and Edward. So they're going to grow up in England Protestant. However, his oldest child is raised by Catherine. Her name is Mary. She's going to be raised by Catherine to be Catholic. So he has 3 children who live. Mary, who's raised Catholic. His second oldest is Elizabeth, who's going to be raised Protestant. And then their only boy is Edward. He's also going to be raised Protestant, but he actually dies when he's 15. So he is king, but only from the time that he's 9 years old until the time he's 15 years old. And then Mary takes over. Then Elizabeth takes over. So he ends up not doing what he hoped to do anyway. Just have a bunch of dead ladies. But eventually, after her sister and brother are queen and then king, Elizabeth is going to take over. She is going to become one of the most famous and loved English monarchs. The 2 things she does that apply to the Protestant Reformation, she is the one who makes the Anglican Church the official church of England. So everyone's tax money is going to support this church. So it didn't matter if you liked the church, that's the one that your money supported. Now, for the SOL, they want us to teach you that she was tolerant of dissenters. A dissenter is someone who disagrees. So the reason they say that is she's going to take ideas from her father's church. She's going to take ideas from the Catholic Church and try to mix them together into this Anglican Church to make everyone happy. You didn't have to agree, but as long as you did not complain in public, you didn't get in trouble. Her goal was for the territory she ruled, for this church, to be something they all had in common. So her goal was for the Anglican Church to be one religion that everyone shared, and that would help make the country more powerful and more unified. If you have any questions, we actually went more in depth into these things in class. Please ask if you want any more details. If not, I'm happy that you tuned in, but I'm sorry that you missed class, and I will see you next class.